Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Pillow Talk. My name is Janet Schroeder. I am one of the scholars in residence here, and I am really honored to get to lead this conversation with some artists I admire deeply. I am going to briefly introduce each of you before we get into this chat. Ephrat Asherie is a New York City-based director, choreographer, performer, and B-girl, and a 2016 Bessie Award winner for Innovative Achievement in Dance. She has received numerous awards to support her work, including Dance Magazine's inaugural Harkness Dance Promise Award and 2 National Dance Project Awards. As artistic director of Ephrat Asherie Dance, her work has been presented on stages nationally and internationally. Yes. Next to Ephrat is Michelle Dorrance, who is a New York City-based artist. Mentored by Gene Medler in his North Carolina Youth Tap Ensemble, she was fortunate to study under many of the last master hoofers, envious. In 2011, she created Dorrance Dance. A lover of collaboration and rebellion, she has created work with a unique range of artists, including the 2 people sitting on either side of her, Dormisha, Derek K. Grant, and Nicholas Van Young. 2018 Doris Duke Artist, 2017 Ford Foundation Art of Change Fellow, and 2015 MacArthur Fellow. She has been acknowledged and supported by organizations across the U.S. And finally, Donovan Dorrance. He hails from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where he trained as a multi-instrumentalist. As music director of Dorrance Dance, he composes original music for the company, including the music in The Center Will Not Hold. Outside of dance, he scores films, teaches music technology, and produces and mixes music for other artists. So the main idea of our conversation is going to be to talk about The Center Will Not Hold, the performance, the show that is in the Ted Shawn Theater. But we're also going to kind of zoom out and around your professional and artistic careers. But I do want to start with the seed, the original seed, perhaps, of this show, The Center Will Not Hold, which was a short duet called A Little Room between Ephrat and Michelle. You talked a little bit about this yesterday, so I'm going to summarize kind of what I heard you say and ask a further question, which is after they performed that duet, tap dance legend and artistic advisor Brenda Buffalino told them, there is a whole world here. And that was the kind of impetus to expand. And so I wonder if you could talk about how did you go from a very brief duet to what we see now? What were the first steps? What were the questions you were asking and the moves you first made to get into this?
I went over to your house and we had like a 4-hour conversation because I think it was one of the reasons it struck me so strongly is that Ephrat had an opportunity that like was kind of lived in one lane and then shifted, and that possibility opened into this collaboration. But and I should let you speak about this, but the original opportunity that was Ephrat's to gather folks that were footwork, that lived in a footwork-driven space. She'd said, would you come play and be percussive and et cetera. When we realized we could do this in another space and that it could possibly have a different feeling, I kind of want to hand this to you because it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks when you said it could be the world of the duet, and I was like, what? So I'd love to hand it to you.
No, it's interesting. I think both of us relate to the idea of like creating, for lack of a better word, like a closing number for a festival where it's like high energy, because the forms that we're living in and all the forms that are part of this lineage, I mean, you saw the energy on that stage, right? So those forms, again, because of the histories they come from, the level of energy in like a short amount of time is colossal, right? And sometimes that energy is viewed as like, oh, this high, celebratory, high energy thing that can close a program, right? Or a festival. But actually, there's so much depth and emotional weight in these dances, again, because of where they come from. And I feel like that's what we are exploring a lot in this work. And so when that sort of lane, like Michelle said, shifted from being like, oh, please choreograph this closing number to like, actually, you can make anything you want now. That's why I was like, Michelle, what if we do that? Let's expand the duet, because we had that permission to sort of investigate those emotional qualities that we're both really interested in and how they intersect the dances that we do.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about that process then. Okay, so I love hearing that. Like, that's the first time I've heard you all articulate it in that way, that like, so then when you're starting to think about the dance practices that you're going to bring into this, or maybe you already had those in mind, how did the beginning of the creative process go at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the music had a lot to do with it.
Absolutely.
That there was so much music. I mean, Donovan created so much incredible music, some of which didn't even make it into the show.
So much.
It's so sad.
That we love.
We just couldn't.
There's a whole
dramaturgically-
2 more
yeah.
albums if you wanted to flesh them out. I know, bless you. I'm so sorry.
We had to kill our darlings because we were like, where could this fit? And we were like, shoot.
And also just the ideas in relationship to the cast. I mean, so in this moment, this like 4 hours at Ephrat's apartment, and she now lives like much closer to me than she once did.
It's
Yeah,
so
we live in
amazing.
Brooklyn now. When she lived on 100.
Is 4 hours before A Little Room or 4 hours?
No, after A Little Room,
Yeah,
when we had
okay,
this
got it.
conversation, and it was Ephrat saying this could be the world. And then we were both, I remember I feel like we were standing and you were like writing on your laptop and I was like scribbling in a notebook. And because it was ideas and feelings that the world could hold, and they were darker. They weren't, we have to end the show with a bang, and it should be uplift and celebration. And isn't it incredible that these forms can intersect? It's more that, of course, these forms can intersect and we don't need to point at it. It's going to exist as a fabric of the language of the thing. And also, we are in the darkest of times, and there's no way we couldn't reflect where we are. Yeah, go ahead. I feel like you're...
No, exactly. Like that idea, of course, these forms intersect is like just the tiniest part of what this work is, right? You know what I mean? Like, of course they intersect. They're part of the same lineage. They have so much specificity. But because our collaborators are creating and performing at such a high level, they can carry all the storytelling. They can carry all the different relationships that we were excited about investigating. They can carry sort of the idiosyncratic, some of the pedestrian moments that we were trying to really create this unison feeling. And it's because of them that we actually were able to explore the ideas that have this emotional weight, right? Because all of that other stuff, I'm not saying it's taken for granted, but everyone is clocked in. We are locked in. We understand why we're here together to do this.
And in part because everyone is an expert practitioner of what they do, to investigate something else is from such a refined place. So...
Yeah. So, well, you started to mention a bit about the music, so I would love to bring Donovan in, because you were saying that music was driving a lot of it. And so, Donovan, can you tell us a little bit about the music from A Little Room, and then what you did to kind of move that forward?
Awesome, yeah. Let me give a disclaimer real quick. These two are masterful orators because they do this all the time, and I never do this, so just give me some grace. When I tangent, just reel me back in.
We are the queens of tangent.
That's fair.
A lot of neurodivergence on
Yeah,
this
that
panel.
is the truth. Okay, so how did we get from A Little Room to the rest of the world? Was that sort of the question? Okay, so A Little Room was the title of the duet that these two originally made, and then thus the name of the piece of music as well. So the very opening number of the show. So for anyone who's seen it or who is about to see it, the show opens, well, without too much spoilers, with...
There's a prologue,
There's
and
a
that's
prologue.
all we'll say.
Yeah, there's a prologue. But then the first actual piece of music that I wrote is this little short piece. That was the first of anything to exist. And yeah, it's a prepared piano piece. So for anyone who doesn't know, preparing a piano involves altering the piano sound by means of putting foreign objects inside of the piano, manipulating the strings, and the way in which I like or have found myself to enjoy most prepared piano is when the piano becomes even more percussive. So its classification as an instrument is, of course, a keyboard instrument, but it's also a percussive instrument, not a string instrument, because the means of it producing sound is hammers striking the strings, right? So my favorite means of pianos being prepared that I've heard from other artists is when the piano is even more percussive than it naturally is. And I think I like that so much because I love working with percussive dancers and dancers that move so sharply to music. And so in thinking about writing music for dance, I just want things to be just like so locked in and so time rather than like super languid. So yeah, in my exploration of preparing the piano in a multitude of ways for these various numbers for this whole piece, that was sort of at the forefront of my mind. Like, how can I make something that people really want to move to? Yeah, and I think the most successful pieces were the ones that I think ended up being the most percussive and thus the most exciting for the dancers to dance to. Does that sound right?
Now I want to go back and watch that part because that you've just like added a whole new layer to my understanding of that music in the opening and really throughout. You all were just moments ago talking about the storytelling aspects of the piece, and I would love to hear you say a bit more about that in general, but in particular how you were using the vocabularies of these wide variety of dance styles to get at some storytelling qualities.
I think all the forms on stage are inherently narrative because of the histories that they come from, right? Histories of resilience and people overcoming oppression, right? So I think so specifically about house and how house, because that's where I'm very super rooted in breaking in house and how like the early underground clubs, there was so much freedom because it was mainly a Black queer space where that community could be free. So anybody that was entering that space was feeling that energy. So the movement had sort of a freedom and a resilience, but also could turn on a dime if you needed to be powerful, if the spirit moved you there. So there was this idea of how are you really honest with whatever you're going through with this movement, because this is a space where you can do that. So then when the movement many years later became codified, right, as a way to keep honoring that and those histories and those communities, accessing that sort of narrative and that sort of truth-telling in yourself is really important. So that it's sort of, to me, when you're not storytelling, when you're doing any of these dances, you're not honoring the dance, right? So to then be able to tap into like, how do you tell stories, right? There's like so many arcs. If things go up, they go down, they go sideways. There's like tension and release. I mean, I think any good dance will tell a story, but these dances, it's so present. And then to be working with all these artists that have their own stories, their own specific backgrounds, their own regional differences in the dance. I think, now I'm forgetting exactly what the question was, but I'm so sorry. But I just feel like, it's like when people are surprised that this is what we do, it's like, but it's already there. You know what I mean? It's there. It's so present.
And I think a few of the things that Ephrat said, I'll just piggyback on. No, I also sort of forgot it, but I
was like, I'm with you.
I moved to say, because Ephrat said resilience, and I think the tension between resilience and that they are also forms of resistance, most of them, that lives so deeply inside of the expression in the work, right? And that they are forms that have been innovated through solo improvisation, individual style, individual expression, so that these very unique individual singular artists are coming together to be a collective. And that is a radical act, and that there's a moment where when we first do this, it's almost like we're scared of getting caught. That it's not quite okay to be this right now in this world. And there's certainly forces trying to push that idea away. There's so much division. So even the idea, and of course there's, no one is a robot, and we're not like, corps de ballet at any moment in the work. But as we come together as individuals in these group moments, whether they are pedestrian, we were talking about some of the movement qualities that we explored through our forms and then back into just a very human, pedestrian, expressive space. I think that the nature and the essence of what we're doing, we hope the energy is obvious because of the way we're doing it. So maybe that got back to the question a little bit.
I think. Oh, now I lost my train of thought.
Anyone remember the question?
It was about storytelling. I remember that.
I think we kind of answered it.
We did. Oh, absolutely. I just had a follow-up, and now it's gone. It's like that.
That's the thing we talked about before.
Yes, it is. Oh, I remember. Thank you. Thank you all for going on that journey with all of us. It's a question about choreography and improvisation and the relationships between the forms. And so, but I want, like, you could talk about this piece, but I mean, really, this is in your work, and I'm going to bring you into this one in a moment, but in dance in particular, it's a part of your work across the board, not just this show. So how do you think about the relationship as a choreographer, as a director, the relationship between choreography and improvisation when you are working with these dance forms?
Well, I just want to say it's really interesting. Yesterday after the show, someone said, how much of that was improvised and how much was choreographed? And I was like, could you not tell the part? If you couldn't tell the parts that were choreographed in unison, we really haven't done our job.
Bummer.
I was like, oh my gosh.
2 hours before show call the next day, we're on stage cleaning.
I think just randomly everyone got in a clump and did the same movement. I was like, that is an epic alignment.
No, but it's interesting. It's an interesting question because there are moments of simultaneous improvisation and refined choreographed moments, so that, or knowing there's a structural idea, and usually it's musically structural, right? That there is improvisation that will align and then filter into a incredibly refined choreographic moment. And that is something I think that unless you're used to seeing it, or you have studied a form that's a part of what you're asked to do, like, you better solo all the way till the end of the phrase and get right back into the choreography. You know what I mean? Like, that is one of those thrilling things where, like, actually it's a thing that you love or hate on yourself about after a show in a given moment. But what was the original question?
The balance between improvisation and choreography. Right, but it's what Michelle said. Because we are all improvisers on stage, if we didn't get to do that, it would not be honest. We have to show who we are, right? This piece is deeply personal in that it is a reflection of all of us in this emotional world that we're creating. But I think the challenge is what Michelle said, like, how do we structure that? So we're a squad. Like, even if there is conflict and tension, and hopefully you saw when that was building, I mean, even spoiler, okay, I won't say anything, but like the initial duet, right? It's unclear what some of those relationships are, right? And it's always interesting for us to hear from the audiences in terms of what did you see in each duet. But I think it's that challenge, and it's actually really rewarding as a dancer to be like, okay, I am doing my thing for this part of the music. And sometimes it's not as simple as like, 4 8 counts. Sometimes it's based on something crazy that Donovan has composed, and you have to hit all these wild accents, like Manon and Beastie's duet in conflict. It's crazy what they're doing. And then they have to join us back in any given moment. That is really exciting, and I think choreographically inherently builds a tension because your presence is different. Right. It's not just, you're not just improvising in a vacuum. You are improvising in this world, and you are connected so deeply because you know you're about to line back up with your fellow dancers.
I would also say that being invited into improvisational and choreographic modes in time signatures or feels that do not line up with the feel or groove that you learned a part of your form in throws you into a completely different space. And that, as a device, I believe it puts us in such a vulnerably expressive place, which is also so important to what we're trying to communicate emotionally in this work. So I would, you know what I mean? So we do, I mean, and I feel a few times we created the percussive score of the choreography, I mean, especially in the second line. In order for everyone to be able to hold on, we all would just count it and sing the score before we even started dancing to it. So that we were so locked in our time that we could make choices. So there is an interesting score that goes from choreographed to completely freestyled, but the rhythmic structure is set. So the rhythmic composition is set. Half of it is choreographed precisely. The second half of it is completely freestyled, but to the exact same rhythmic score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it reminds me, Yeah, it reminds me, isn't Brenda use this? Like the equalization of the vibration? Like that's a Brenda. I feel like I've heard her say that. Like there's different ways to approach unison, right? It's like the rhythmic precision.
Equalization of vibration.
She said, and Gus Solomon's, may he rest in peace, he would always say the unison approach. Because in the dances we do, we all look different doing them, of course, and that's the point. We're not a corps de ballet. Right? Very much on purpose. We are who we are, but the unison approach when you're approaching like a squad. And that's why we rehearse before every show the parts that are that, to make sure we're locked in.
Yeah. I sometimes call it energetic unison when I see that. That's what I'm like, they're not doing the same thing, but energetically they are synced. Donovan, you tried to get in there a few times.
Don.
But I have a question for you. In relation to this choreographed improvisation, I mean, there's structure, right? There is a very firm structure under all of that.
And sometimes people push at that structure.
Okay. But in terms of
mistakes.
composing the music for this piece, in terms of composing the music for this piece, I think it's your water bottle with your next to your you're killing it. How did you think about that? Like how was the conversation about choreography, improvisation, your composition, all of that in dialogue?
That's a great question. Okay, before I answer that, let me take 20 seconds to say what I was going to say earlier, which is just, I didn't actually say anything. I was just trying to gesture that I had the thought. But no, I just wanted to throw light on you guys to say, and stick up for the people who sometimes don't know, is it improvised or is it choreography? I'm not a dancer at all. I've seen a lot of dance, but I think an insight that I have in being exposed to the creative process in dance is the incredible direction you two give to people who are improvising, right? So obviously there's the narrative structure there and then the music is guiding as well, but it's not just okay, here's what I want you to do, and then okay, here's 8 bars where you get to do what you want. It's here's 8 bars, here's what I want you to do to serve the work, and you two are just so great at that. And that I think that blurred line right there of it's not completely improvised in that it's do whatever you want, nor is it totally, here's what I want you to do. It's that in-between spot that I think that's so enjoyable. And you guys are brilliant.
Well,
yeah.
And I'll give also, I appreciate that, Donovan, thank you, because I think Ephrat and I talk about this quite a bit, that it's so exciting to see someone that inspires you and to be able to play, to be accepted or invited into their space to play and say, would you, can we explore this, is a gift. It is a gift to collaborate with the choreographic collaborators, improvisational collaborators, and artistic collaborators. That is the cast. It's unbelievable. The other thing I'll say about Donovan as a collaborator, kind of talking about this, in structuring the music and in wanting to both, of course, create this tension and kind of honor a new world that we're existing in, and not just that joyful one that closes the festival. Donovan, I remember specifically for Footy, it's the nickname of a section that we have listened to. There are 2 forms in the work that share kind of a pretty close 10,
tempo.
Yeah, I would say
160.
10 BPM. They're very close in tempo, and it's Chicago Footwork and Detroit JIT. It's fast. It's incredibly fast. Their tempos are so fast. And Donetta sent Donovan one of her favorite tracks. Mike sent one of his favorite tracks. And then I also asked them, and I feel like I checked in with you and I was like, can we ask them to send an out-of-the-box version of their favorite? So to give Donovan the lane of this is the really traditional version of this. And so in the work in which, not everybody's seen the piece. Anyway, I think you'll get it. But there's a moment that is really also driven by the kind of niche tastes and understanding of some of our collaborators in a musical space, and with you investigating your own tastes in a relationship to that, and then things that we just love.
Yeah.
It is to have music dropped into your space to create with it, everyone loses their mind about. That was some of the most fun when we'd be in the studio and Donovan would update the SoundCloud playlist, and it would be a composition where we'd be like, what? Especially the house track that we did not put in the work, but is the curtain call. My gosh, some of the best dancing of the whole creative process happened during that track, and it's not in the show.
No, but some of the stuff did make it into the show because we were so hype about it I mean, I remember we were at Flamenco Vivo rehearsing, and people were doing like all these crazy crosses. It was amazing. And then I remember we were so sad when we had to tell everyone we couldn't put that track in the show, but we were like, no, but some of that choreography can live. And I remember there was pushback. There was like, I don't think it's going to work to another track besides this one. And I was like, no, I think it can work. And then we kind of shifted things, and that's Great and Spacious. Some of that stuff made it into Great and Spacious. Anyways,
the relationships also made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
the relationships that built to that track.
Yeah.
The relationships made it into Great and Spacious. Yes.
All three of us have diagnosed ADHD.
Also, I do want to
We're all medicated, but probably not right now because we were at the Pillow, and we just
still
get to
have
be
the
ourselves.
adrenaline of the show. I do want to say that when we did
Yes.
our wonderful residency at Mass Mocha, which was such a gift to do, Donovan was there with us, and that was really, really so beautiful and helpful because we were really working together in real time, making changes, and we'd be like, Don, can you extend this?
Let's tie that into your question.
Exactly, please.
So the times where I'm not a comfortable improviser, that's probably my biggest flaw as a musician composer. But the times where I improvise are just in solitude and in creation, right? And so it's like, okay, we have a challenge, like, okay, we need to connect these two pieces to create a transition, or it's like before this piece starts, it kind of needs a 30-second introduction. And so then it's like, okay, let me just hit the piano and like see what happens. And so I think that's the times where I get to improvise are just behind the scenes, and it's before something is before decisions are made. And then the other part is, I think my appendage of improvisation is John Angeles in the show. He is a masterful improviser, and he's providing a large percentage of the score as well in his improvisations each night, and in his masterful drumming. And so I think he's being strong where I'm weak in more ways than one. So this dude is jacked. For anyone who hasn't seen the show, he could eat you for breakfast. So yeah, John is improvising for me.
Donovan, I have another question from what Michelle was just saying about like the dancers from, Donetta, the Chicago footwork dancer, Mike, the Detroit JIT dancer, sending you their favorite tracks, sending out of the box tracks. You've gotten these, you've listened to them. What do you do next?
I'm very comfortable in a number of the genres that are providing the music for these dance forms. A lot of like traditionally black dance forms, traditionally black music. I have been listening to that stuff for a long time, thanks to my sister Michelle. So I'm very comfortable as a fan of those types of music. And so I think having the sort of decided sonic landscape of like prepared piano, like being like weaved through the whole piece, just finding a way to, I guess make a pseudo JIT track, but with all of the percussive elements coming out of the piano. And then, like manipulating the hell out of them, on my computer, right? But I think it's my comfort in just being a fan of music like that I feel like I can at least make an attempt. And, maybe it's sacrilege to JIT producers out there who are like, this is trash, or whatever. But I definitely absolutely tried to honor those genres in my effort to just make these dancers want to shake their booties. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess I would say, like, we know if people are moved by listening to it, and immediately people will move.
Yeah.
If you want to move, if I want to move, if you want to move, if we want to move, that's it.
That's a good signifier of did I do okay?
Yeah.
And then there are also tunes that did not inspire us to move, which were also really important in the storytelling, and put in what we're asking of ourselves in those moments. That the emotion that comes from trying, or the effort, I think, is the storytelling.
Yeah. I'm thinking about my own experience of having seen the show a few times, and that each time I'm in the theater, I'm hearing different things. Of course, I'm seeing different things as well, but what I've been interested about the music is, wow, I didn't hear that yesterday, or whoa, like that felt different to me just now. And I'm wondering for you all similarly, like, are there things that still surprise you in this work, whether it's musically, whether it's dancing, when you're out there?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I think because the world is so rich and layered, it sort of depends on where you are on a given performance. Sometimes you're like, I'm thinking about my relationship to this person. Like, hopefully we're rehearsed enough so we're clear choreographically and like in space what we're doing. And sometimes you're tasking yourself with like, okay, how can I bring this part of myself to the story? And so maybe you actually see someone in a different way for the first time, and you're like, oh, you smile. Oh, Michelle always does this. She's like, when you smile at me with those eyes, but it's not really a smile. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, she notices this thing that I don't. And it's those kind of little discoveries, in space, in real time. And that happens musically. Like, sometimes I hear John doing something during my solo. I'm like, oh my God. Now I'm doing, you know what I mean? So absolutely that happens. I think in all the levels, sort of physically, sonically, emotionally, dramaturgically, making discoveries. We have so many notes all the time.
It's endless. I mean, I think what I can say from that, Janet, just because like I have so much of the music literally memorized, it's about seeing, observing, because like, I think there is a really incredible aural sight, and then there is, right, like there is seeing that then invokes, like I can hear someone's visual choices, right? And this is the idea of being rhythm dancers, regardless of whether everyone is percussive in a given moment. I guess what is most exciting every night is to watch people discover and choose into different parts of the music and or away from the most obvious places that you'd think to accent, or you'd think to let yourself go, or you'd think to be explosive. It's really incredible to watch every artist pull at the composition in their way, because each one of them is a composer to us musically, and it's exceptional. It's like, that blows. Watching Beastie and Mental freestyle in that section and watching what happens, the counterpoint that is rhythmic, of course, the tension that lives in this visual space, and their physical and physiological relationships to one another. But what they're doing, to me, percussively in counterpoint is exceptional. It's so exciting.
In that moment, we're all like leaning slightly forward. We're not really visible, so we're all slightly like looking out of the corner of our eyes because it's so good. And I'm like, yes.
I've started turning my head really early. Oh my gosh! The second we're on the right foot, I'm like,
actually, and I
don't want to miss it.
That is really an amazing part of the show. Like, we get to watch each other. That is a gift.
I have just one more kind of line of questions that I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to open it up for your questions. But I can't believe we haven't yet talked about the lighting. Thank you.
Kathy.
Yes.
Kathy Kaufman. Let's have a round of applause for Kathy Kaufman.
It is incredible, and it is making a very significant contribution to the world that you are creating. And so, I guess I'd love to hear about sort of how you collaborated with her, but also how you all think about ways light can help you advance the storytelling that you are trying to do.
I think when we were, of course, as this started with just the duet, in order to create this space that was kind of stark, I don't think either of us gravitate towards the look and the feel of an LED because it's colder. And we love conventional light because of the warmth and what we believe brings, human quality to a live, theatrical performance, anything on a stage. And we realized how powerful switching into an LED and to have this colder feeling, starker, colder feeling. So interestingly, we pushed into space with that feeling and asked, of course, because now we're both seasoned tourers, does any house have the lights that we had to premiere something at Fall for Dance at New York City Center is, and then to try to tour it, no one has that plot anywhere else in the country. It's crazy. So that we were like, oh gosh, how many movers do people usually have? Because we knew we wanted these certain looks. We knew we had the idea of the grid. We had the idea of the line. Like, we had these really refined, very specific if you were to have a conventional light and not a moving light, that is a lot of focus time, and that's a lot of shutters, and that's a lot of things, and it's too much time. That dance, you know what I mean? We're just not given that kind of time in a theater in order to accomplish that. And she was real with us about what we could get away with. And actually, that was a great part of the conversation. Like, what is the most important? Kathy also asks us great questions. Yeah. She's taught, I think, both of us so much by what she asks us. And then it allows you to edit before you're holding on to something with both hands and can't let go. Yeah, so she's an incredible teacher. And I mean, she's taught me almost everything I know about lighting.
I think she understood the world implicitly, and to be able to start with that duet and for her to understand, okay, we're expanding this world. She was really a true collaborator in that sense.
And we sent her, even if we hadn't created to some of the playlist, we sent her the playlist and she also understood.
Kathy's a huge fan of music and is so, I guess, emotionally moved by stuff. And she's brilliant.
So in regards to the lights, when you're saying we knew we wanted, the color, the box, there's, the box that's downstage, the long, narrow box that's also of light that shifts and changes colors. Maybe can we talk about that moment? That the moment of movement and the shift of the light and the shift of the music, and that for me that's like a turning point. It's really important. So I would love to just hear you talk about that moment, kind of maybe what you were thinking about, or how you were thinking about the intersections of all of these different kind of sensory inputs in that moment.
Just to clarify, are you talking about when it turns blue? Okay, just checking.
Blue.
I'm like, I don't want to spoil, but okay.
I don't know if you'll see it coming. Maybe
the
we'll.
line? Is that...
But yeah, exactly. I think actually we even added something musical, which Donovan, you've posted a story about that. It was me clapping in the Guggenheim the first time we went in before we performed there. Yeah. So there is we really did actually talk about and added to signify this shift. And we were getting to a place in rehearsal, and we mentioned this the other day in the talk back, I guess, we were getting to a place in rehearsal in this super refined, which was both stressful and incredibly motivating, when everyone felt like we had achieved this singular focus amidst, myriad differences, whatever. We're there, we nailed it. And then I think in it was almost a release the very first time we all went into, Fritz actually started this thing that happens that is incredibly emotional. At first, it was very playful, but we realized how serious it became. And so in that moment, it was a release and it was play. But what we realized was happening musically and emotionally in the space, once we turned our mind back into that focused space, it was unveiled to us what was happening, the emotional shift in the work at that moment.
And I think because we were having an emotional shift, but then there's a soloist who's introducing a whole other energy. When Kathy saw that, that lighting cue is is this even real? Sometimes we see it in a photo and we're like, that's really?
We look like we're film and Mega looks like a real person.
We're a green screen or something. It's so crazy.
The light is it's magic. It is magic.
And in some ways, I think it even, I don't know, it allowed us, once we feel it, we kind of really go into a deeper emotional state than even when we rehearse. It does really
trance-like,
Yeah, it really does. It really supports each other. All the elements really evoke a depth in us that is shocking sometimes.
Well, and also the cast seeing it. Yeah, it's once you see the paintbrush, you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's I don't know.
Yeah, it allows you. It invites you in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It invites us into a space that we feel comfortable letting go into, whereas I don't think we would had we not had the shift.
Yeah.
I think it's like chicken and egg kind of a story, but we need it in order to help tell the story, but we also need it in order to be able to tell it in the first place.
Yeah. It's a release, and it's not always pretty. It feels, grotesque. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna open this up to your questions. I will listen to them and I will repeat them because we do want to make sure that we get it all on the camera. And So the question is about the darkness on the stage, that it is very dark, and that makes it sometimes really hard to see, and wanting to know if that was intentional.
I don't think we're trying to obscure as much as we are trying to invite you, right, to really look. And I think also we're trying to isolate, because that's something that's hard to communicate on stage with multiple bodies. So to isolate folks to that refined, moving through space, it requires a really narrow light, and if it's too bright, then it bounces and it's not as isolating. So like finding the happy medium, ideally the happy medium does allow you to see it and is not making you be like, what the is going on this stage? We do want you to at least see, is that is that someone? Or that's someone. Ideally, it's that is someone, as opposed to a question mark. But it's hard. We did actually just, I appreciate the question, because we did change the levels of 2 of the side lights before the show today.
Brighten it up
because
just a little.
we took that note.
And I think, though, one of the challenges, and this is another, like, kudos to these amazing artists or collaborators, there is a lot of specificity in the spacing, because when you're dealing with these kind of very thin channels of light, you have to know when you're in your light, because if you're not, you're literally not seen. And that was a big part of like being in our tech residency at
Dancer
Error
error is also a thing, is a factor.
But that's a whole other level of sort of like awareness. It's not just you dancing in space. It's like, I need to dance in space and make sure that my left shoulder is in the light. If not, nobody can see,
I was actually thinking about the lighting, but also the movement composition, the staging, that sometimes the lights are very bright and yet dancers are still obscured by other dancers, right? And like I was wondering about that. Oh, and also when there's a moment when it's sort of like there's like 4 different duets happening, and I'm like, who do I watch? Who do I want to see right now? I feel like there's also potentially some choice making by y'all in moments like that as well. And I wonder, can you like talk a little bit about compositional choices that force an audience to see or not see?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to allow the audience to have that choice. It's really hard for us to choose too sometimes. Like, there's so much amazing artistry, and I think it's interesting to observe in yourself, like, where did my eye go to and why? Or what did I hear in the music and why? You know what I mean? Did I hold on to this melody? Or I'm following this couple through the whole piece.
Yeah.
And I know their story and I made up their story. That to me is really the exciting part about sharing the work.
Yeah, and I think in the like dream of any audience member superimposing themselves into or onto the work, like your observation tells your story to you. Your choices are yours. And it is very of the world right now that you will never learn it all. You'll never see it all. It's hard. I think it's also really hard for us. I would even include you in this, Donovan. I often I feel like Ephrat and I commiserate in the ways that we're self-critical of like often trying to do too many things at once. And it's not just like neurodivergence. I think it is, we have voracious appetites. We both love learning. And we are both like deeply committed to our communities and our families and our friends. Like, we really believe in a depth of relationship, and it is very hard. So I think like creating these situations on stage, it is honest. It's reflective of a deep truth that we don't talk about, but I think it's I don't think we needed to talk about it to manifest it. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Other questions? So this question is actually, she's bringing jazz into the conversation, saying that in hearing the conversation that we're having, thinking about structure, thinking about improvisation, and also your experience of the performance, that she's wondering how jazz kind of plays into this.
It's one of my first love languages. So, I don't ever walk into a space without that. It just lives, I think, I was raised dancing almost exclusively to jazz as a young person before I was 10 into my, terrible middle school years into high school. And it's just like a bedrock of, the way I learned to tap dance and the pulse, I think. But also, as an improvisational form of expression in America, it touches everything that, lives in this space.
Yeah. My brother's a jazz pianist. I grew up listening to him play all the time. The second evening length work I ever made was in collaboration with him, and we were looking at the vernacular jazz dance roots of breaking hip hop house and how, a lot of the music that we grew up listening to in the 80s and 90s sampled funk, yes, but also jazz, right? So it's part of the world, 100%. I'm glad you got that.
I'll say one more thing, just because this is not often said in spaces that, investigate jazz, that tap dance as a language, a percussive and a musical language, is so much older than jazz and has informed so many huge foundational ideas, rhythmically, structurally, et cetera, inside of jazz music, including big shifts in jazz music. So and that we're continuing to investigate this. And I was just talking to Lisa Latouche, another tap dancer, about this, as she spent some time in the Louis Armstrong home, how he learned the composition of two tap dancers, and it informed his horn playing so much in his early years. And like that, we often talk about stride piano players learning their pulse from tap dancers, and that's like very early jazz. But like that these stories are actually still unveiling themselves is so special. So I also just feel like I should say that in the world. I'm sure Lisa will be around soon to talk about what she's up to. Yeah.
Donovan, do you want to add anything about jazz and its influence on you?
I'm just a fan and an ally of jazz, and I have zero formal education in jazz. And so I'll leave the two experts to say what they said.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, in the back. So the question is about the title, a line of which resonates with a Yeats poem, and she wants to know about the title.
So we did not choose the poem. Brenda Buffalino chose the poem, and she didn't even really knowingly choose it. She just said it to us in a moment of
deep conversation
and critical feedback. No, but she is an emphatic communicator and a great storyteller. And if you do not know Brenda, right here in the archives, I'm sure there is an interview or two or three or four. She was explaining to us, and Pam, I feel like, do you share a part of this in your pre-show?
I did when she was here yesterday.
Thank you for doing that.
Ephrat told me this story.
Yeah, she really put upon us in a moment where we were developing this piece past the duet. I don't know whether she thought we were going to do an hour by ourselves, but it was a miracle that we got 4.5 minutes together, which is a story we tell, and we can tell it another time. But she communicated to us that there was a quality that we were investigating together that was, this is sort of the way we interpreted it, that it was a tremendous vulnerability. And would you say there was anything else that wraps that up?
Yeah, I think it was a vulnerability. It was a certain kind of connection that came out of us knowing each other so well and so deeply for so long.
Yeah.
And that kind of investigation, she wanted us to push it further. She was like, you're not done. What's underneath?
Yeah,
there?
And she said, if you lose that quality, the center will not hold. And she was telling us the piece basically would suck. She was saying you will not achieve what you're seeking. You will, and we also then realized in that moment also that was in the ether. It was what we were. It captured what we were after in these times. It captured the act of us coming together to do this thing. It captured so much for us so immediately. So sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. And then how important it was that there was someone that we, of course, revere and respected so much who was able to say that. Because even just the process of getting everyone together and making this work and all those moving parts, it's easy to sort of get lost a little bit and lose your center. It like literally and figuratively speaking. And so for her to say that, I think it kind of took our breath away and was clearly the title right away.
Yeah, and then we also realized, are you quoting Yeats? What's that? So then, of course, investigating the poem, we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course she is. And then reading it, we were like, oh, geez.
And you also should know we both received a text message from Brenda today. After she saw the show last night, she said, I have so many ideas banging in my brain. Call me right away. So it's a gift to be able to work with her in that way.
It's incredible.
Other questions? Yes. This is a great question about improvisation. He's asking, in a period of improvisation when you're attempting a move or maybe a musical something, and it fails, how do you recover? How long does it recover? How do you come back from that?
I'll give one answer, and you'll probably give another one. So often when something fails me, it's happening so quickly. I think I'm about to go into something that's a 16th note, and it could just be my weight's in the wrong place, and then the music is not accurate, and I'm explosively angry, but immediately you must make another choice. But it's almost as if you don't do it intellectually. Your body solves the problem, or your musical subconscious solves the problem for me. So often, if I actually make it, because most often I'm improvising in my tap shoes. It's just a joy, and I feel like a chaotic beast when I'm improvising without tap shoes on. So I like try to just not judge myself and have fun. But I am most critical of my improvisation when I'm a tap dancer, and sometimes that self-criticism, the energy of that, will linger for so long. So I can move on immediately and also not move on at all, and I can ruin my own experience of the work if I get stuck there. And I really should remember. Our dad raised us on the last of the human freedoms, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So I really just need to have a better attitude in that moment and let it go.
That is a book we also really bonded over early in our friendship, because I read that once a year. It's so real. Crazy.
So that's one answer. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because, of course, there's different ways of making mistakes or falling out of things, right? Like sometimes it's literally even today, I slipped on the floor, but it was just my pinky that gave out when my hand was on the floor. I don't know if it was sweat or the floor, but it was oh, that was different. And then that's the same kind of thing you did, yeah, because it just gave out, right?
Where, when?
In our duet at the end, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's fine. Well, it's bad when people notice, because you always hope they don't notice, but sometimes they notice. Okay, so there's that kind of stuff where you're it's
Before
just,
sevens?
Yeah. It's just too fast, and you just recover. Your body just does a thing. It's sort of a microcosm of fight or flight. You just make it work. There's that. Then there's the other thing, which is so many of in street and club dance, for example, in locking, the actual dance style of locking was created by a man, Don Campbell Locke Jr., not being able to do a dance called the Funky Chicken. And he was sort of making fun of himself and doing all these gestures. And that whole thing, his inability to do this other dance, became the biggest dance craze in the 1970s. That was his group was the first group to be on Soul Train in the 70s. And that was a mistake that he made. Do you know what I mean? So there's also that part of me that's well, I'm going to make a mistake. It's going to be better than anything I've ever done.
I seek after this attitude.
I don't know.
So good.
And sometimes it's shocking. The fun mistakes, though, are when you make them together.
Oh, gosh.
And you're oh.
Yeah, making a mistake in choreography is a whole nother thing. Then you get to improvise. And that can be great or terrible.
Yeah.
You maintain your fluidity.
So, yeah.
Yes, you have
I mean,
to.
you said fight or flight. She did not say freeze. I just want you to know that, because that is the dancer's worst enemy in mistake making.
Yeah. I also have to shout out, there was a dancer, a b-boy that I came up watching named Abstract, and his whole style was based on how he fell out of his movement. So he would attempt moves, kind of traditional breaking moves, maybe a flare or a halo or something, and then he would catch himself in weird ways when he made mistakes, when he didn't execute the movement. And everyone was oh my God, Abstract, that's so crazy. And he's what? And that's how also he got his name. It was his abstract style, right? So, I mean, there's something there, That's
great.
Another question, yeah. Improvisation is the art of making wisdom and discipline look spontaneous. Can you respond to that?
I mean, I think this is interesting because of Ephrat just mentioning abstract. There are folks that are not formally trained in a specific technique that are some of the most moving dancers. And I mean, that I've experienced or watching someone. I mean, this is interesting. Some of my favorite improvisational dancers, some of them are not trained at all, and some of them are so trained, but their choices go away from their training. So I think there's something interesting to that choice. Does that exist because of? I'm having a hard time with this. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's interesting because I think the freedom to improvise comes from spending so much time with your instrument, whatever that is, if it's outside of your body, like a musical instrument, or your actual body. Because, I mean, like the club dancers that I know, and I want to shout out my friend Sydney Vall, who performed on the Inside Out stage in 2014 or 13 with his son who was 5, and now his son graduated from high school. Oh my gosh. He will be like, I'm not really a dancer. I don't have training. I'm like, what are you talking about? He literally grew up dancing in the clubs, dancing with his family. He has spent so much time on the dance floor, dancing with his body. He has so much information in his body. So I think it's about that. It's like, that's the wisdom and the experience, right? And then you have all the freedom. So the training comes in so many ways. It comes in hours and hours of the club, or with a jam, or for some people a class. But for, a lot of the dances we do, it's not classes. It's just
and actually, it's
community.
interesting. Ephrat yesterday, and like Manon was in the backseat of the car, and I mentioned Sydney, and she just said he's the best dancer I've ever seen.
He is your favorite dancer's favorite dancer. That's how. Yeah, I mean, because he's so free. Yet he has so much movement that he can access. And I think that's the thing about this cast. It's like people just pull things out sometimes and you're like, wait, you've never done that before. Like, I'd never seen you even do that. And then they were moved by the music in a different way, or they heard a different part of the tune. And I think that's where the freedom, that's where the exciting moments.
Yeah, but it's interesting because there's not a theory that you have to apply when you are a mover improvising. And that is a gift. But it's also why I find myself to be so critical when have disappointed myself percussively. Because there are these rules that I've given I also don't have to live by those rules. I've just decided in that moment that I would like to stay on time. But I could choose not to. Love, gosh, when I was a teenager, I loved free jazz. My gosh, why don't I? Anyway, it's interesting the rules that we make for ourselves, because otherwise there really are not rules unless we've built them into the space to communicate something. Otherwise, there is truly freedom.
Right, but that's why I just revere Michelle so much, because I think having sonic responsibility coupled with the movement that you're doing is next level. So, okay, I slipped, my finger went out, but did you hear some colossal thing where I was out of time? No. Donovan noticed, but hopefully not too many other people, right? But if you're not hitting something musically that you're after, like, that feels real. It's a sonic responsibility. It's a different kind of responsibility. Of course, phrasing-wise, I can be like, oh my gosh, this was really off. It's just different. That's why I really...
Well, and what I'll say in response to that is I am invited into such a more sophisticated place when I'm dancing with this cast, because I have such a hard time with what is it, like a 16th note triplet that I'm putting my foot down on, because you guys are like bending the time right here, and I am fighting a very rigid understanding of what my physical placement is. And so to me, there is such a greater space that we can occupy when we're not in exactly that place.
And I have to push back, because I think that's an immaculate level of clarity and articulation. So Michelle can look at my movement and say, oh my God, so you were like doing this in 6 and then you switched to this. I'm like, what? I was just dancing.
Innate, Joel. You're intuitive.
No, but I'm just saying. And I think that's actually a really beautiful thing. Do you know what I mean? Because I'll just be like, oh, just feel it and put your back into it. And Michelle's like, but where are we in the phrase? I'm like, good question.
But that's my rigidity, I would say. So.
Y'all, I love that we're gonna end right here, because I think that this is why we have what's happening on the stage this week in the Center Will Now Hold, is this friendship and this deep admiration for each other, for what you do, the work that you do. I'm pretty sure we all share that. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks, Janet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet.